Welcome to the Fighting on Film podcast, the podcast all about classic and obscure war movies, from the Normandy landings to the days of chivalry and swords. If it's been captured on film, we're going to try and cover it. I'm Robbie of RM Military History.
I'm Matthew Moss of Historical Firearms and the Armourer's Bench. Hello there, sorry to interrupt. I wanted to let you know that you can now join our supporting cast over on Patreon. As thanks for your support, you'll be able to help us pick films, submit questions for guests, have first pick on brand new and exclusive merch, and much more. Thank you for your support. Now back to the show. Hello and welcome back to Fighting on Film. This week we are taking a look at one of Netflix's more recent war films, Blood and Gold, a film that comes out of Germany and has had a bit of an interesting promo to it, and with a relatively straight trailer, and then followed by a somewhat sort of spaghetti western Euro war movie kind of
movie thing. Yeah. Which I loved. That was really great.
It was very well edited.
One of the most interesting things Netflix done promoting a movie for a while for me, or at least relevant to the show. Really like that. I'm just going to give a warning to listeners this week. My dog's sleeping in the room next to me, and when he is, I always like to say, hear any funny noises, it's him snoring. He's the loudest dog in the world, even when he's asleep. Anyway, but no, I love that trailer. It was like, what if Netflix was around in the 70s and they were like some sort of like low budget, like a Hammer type studio. I really liked it. But then we might come back to that later, because that's maybe where my issues with the movie started. I don't know. It will sort of bleed in later. So maybe we should just throw in the cast quickly, and then production, and get into it. So this movie is led by Robert Masser, and the cast is predominantly made up of German actors. So unless I tell you different, rose to prominence after appearing in Mission Impossible: Rogue Nation in 2015. In 2019, he played the German pilot in 1917. Such a confusing movie to talk about because of the years. He also featured in the Uncharted film adaptation, and this year he will play Alexei, or it's already out, I'm not sure. I don't think it got released in this country yet, I don't know. In the film The Machine, you know that Bert Kreischer, the bearded comedian? He has like a podcast with another comedian.
Right.
And he did this stand-up routine, which was like he was the machine, and it was this whole thing of being in Russia or something, and they've turned it into a movie. But he plays himself, even though he was young at the time.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think I know what you mean.
If you've been on TikTok
I've heard something
or Facebook,
about this, but I haven't listened to the podcast, so I don't know.
It always comes up, this routine.
I've heard something similar to that.
Yeah, not my kind of thing, but it looked interesting. But yeah, he's in that, and the guy has cheekbones you could cut diamonds on. I was like mesmerized by these cheekbones. Like we all wish we looked as chiseled as Massa. They even mention it at the start of the movie. The SS officer goes, "Oh, you have cheekbones that some famous German would be proud of. You look Aryan type spiel." We're talking about that Obersturmführer. He's played by Alex Scheer. He's born in East Germany in 1976, and he's considered one of the most daring German actors of his generation. And he's picked up no less than 8 German film awards. Very prolific in his home country. Lots of German TV film credits. His credits, the notable, include Carlos the Jackal, which was an Emmy Award-winning series from 2010. 2017's Pirates of the Caribbean, Salazar's Revenge. And he played Dieter Degowski in 57 Hours, which was a miniseries depicting the 1988 Gladbeck hostage crisis. Now, if you know anything about that, there's a fantastic verbatim documentary, like traditional documentary on Netflix at the moment, which is brilliant. It's a whole thing about the media get over involved in the hostage crisis. They're following these people around. At one point, they're in a town, and all the media are swarming this car, but the car's with 2 guys in, and they've got guns to hostages. It was a huge thing in the 80s, late 80s in Germany. He plays one of the hostage takers. We play the guy very well from seeing him as menacing in this. I don't think we've had such a caricature of an SS villain since the 70s. It was such a cool, sort of overplayed yet understated performance. I really like watching him work. Then we have Simon Rupp. He plays Paulie. Or Pauli, as you say in German. Blood and Gold is his first credit, but he did appear in the German series Champions. We have Jochen Nickel as the pastor. Fans of the show will recognise him from Schindler's List. He played Rollo in Stalingrad in 1993. Like I knew his face because he had a big beard in this, and I was like, I know that face. And then me and Matt looked it up beforehand because searching some of these actors down through Wikipedia, through IMDb, it's a bit of a nightmare this week. We've had a bit of it seems like this movie, as Netflix does, I don't know how Matt feels about this, but films come out on Netflix, they have their 2 days in the sun, and then they're gone. They sort of fall back into the ether.
Yeah, there's a little bit of buzz for a while, and then not as much. That's for sure. Yeah.
And he was also in the Turncoat series, which is a German mini-series set in 1944, I think. Then we have Mary Hack as Elsa. She's Pauli's sister. She's born in West Germany. She appeared in Outlander in 2018. She was in Soko Stuttgart, which is like a German, I think, police procedural detective show. I think Johann Nickel even appeared in that at one point. And Blood and Gold seems to be her biggest credit that would probably be known to Westerners. She's very good in this. Everyone's very good in this. The cast is really strong. Yeah. Then we have Florian Schmidtke as Dorfler. He's the sergeant, sort of the underling to Oberstführer Starnfeld. He's got many German film and TV credits. Again, things that listeners might know him from is he was Werner in War Sailor, which came out recently on Netflix. And he also played Talio in the German Netflix series Barbarians in 10 episodes from 2020, 2022. It's like a historical action drama.
Like Vikings.
Yeah, it seemed a bit like Vikings. I'm not really fantasy person, or not really fantasy. No. You know what I mean? I know we say chivalry and swords at the start of this show, but I gotta admit,
don't
I'm
start.
not the biggest guy. We're gonna blow the pod wide open. Me and my life firearms.
We have neglected it, and we know we really have.
And there is literally a list of movies at FOF HQ that we have pigeonholed as chivalry and swords movies, and we really should just do a month of them and see if the pod weathers that storm. If you want that,
we should just do one a month for a bit.
If you want that, ladies and gentlemen, please let us know on our socials, because we will accommodate you if you want chivalry and swords.
We frequently get messages about it.
We do. Give them what they want, Matt. Give them what they want. And then we have Roy McCreary, and he plays the US sergeant who's only in it for a few lines, but he's in it nevertheless. He's an English actor. He appeared in The Liberator in 2020. He also played a redcoat in The Patriot, and he also played Captain McAllister in the D-Day reboot series in 2018. They're the major players, really. It's a strong cast, nevertheless. I really enjoyed the cast, but we'll find out what I think later.
Yeah. Let's just round out production side of things. So it's directed by Peter Thorwarth. I'm probably butchering that pronunciation of a fine German name.
Do your best, Matt.
He has had a interesting career directing lots of German music videos and films. In 2021, he directed a successful horror film for Netflix called Blood Red Sky, which is kind of like a virus on a plane.
Yeah, that looked quite interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, he apparently been wanting to make that for a number of years and managed to get it with Netflix. The film was written by Peter and Stefan Barth, who's a novelist and a very experienced screenwriter with lots of German TV and film credits. Cinematography was handled by Mark Archenbach, and the music was co-created by Jessica de Rouge and Hendrik Nolly, a pair of, I believe, Dutch composers. Alongside their score, there's also inclusions of period popular music to break up some of the more tense, serious moments.
I think the soundtrack is one of the strongest parts of this movie. I really like it.
Okay.
It's just a shame. Yeah, I'm going to give up all my final thoughts, but I think it's a shame that the soundtrack isn't then used to lean into more of those beats that they grab in.
I know what you mean. It was filmed in the Czech Republic near Prague, and the Czech town of Vyzluny, I believe it's pronounced, served as the backdrop of Sonnenberg for the film. I don't believe it's actually I think it is actually named as Sonnenberg in the film, but it's essentially it's that provided the backdrop of
Yeah,
the village.
it's like it's like you just called it somewhere, like that when they shoot Chicago and it's New York,
Perhaps, yeah.
sort of thing.
Armorer the armorer was Marek Bocek, and he has worked on a whole raft of really interesting films. Flame and Citron in 2008, a remake of Die Brücke in 2008 as well.
Yes.
The Czech film Tobruk, which is an interesting one we must cover at some point. Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. A little
nice link there to Massa. Yeah.
Yeah. 1864, the Danish production in 2014. Line of Separation 2015 to 18, which was a TV series set at the end of the war. Child 44, which was a Gary Oldman and Tom
flopped a bit, didn't it?
Hardy
I remember.
picture, which just a weird premise to get like a big, a punchy box office on it. Yeah. Anthropoid in 2016, Das Boot in 2018, Jojo Rabbit in 2019.
Wow, what a list.
So the armorer on the film has worked on lots of really good productions, essentially. I couldn't find a historical advisor for the film, but there is a thank you credit at the end to Dr. Christian Hartmann, who's a German historian. So perhaps he may have.
Yeah, I mean, everything I saw looked, right.
Yeah,
well, I couldn't pick it really.
We'll talk a little bit about that in a moment in the alley tally, but I did read that they said during interviews that they wanted to make a Western set during the Second World War, which I think we'll come back to as a point later on. It works in some ways, and in some others it doesn't. Also saw on one of the articles about the film that it was originally going to be called Once Upon a Time in Germany, but this would have clashed with the 2017 movie, so they decided to go with another title.
Yeah, this is a better title.
Yeah, it's a little bit more ambiguous, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, a little bit.
And that,
what you're getting.
I think that brings us to this week's one-word reviews, and we had a couple. Liam Patrick said, "Gut." SOE Spirit of Resistance said, "Meh."
Yeah.
AD Bond said, "Tense." Brian Dark Secret Place on Twitter said, "Meh" as well.
Right.
Mr. C 1966 said, "Need to watch quickly," all one word. Azzy said, "Coolwagen." We had Once a Modeler, another meh. Albert Yome said, "Deadly." JD said, "Brutal." And Stephen O'Neill said, "Okay." So kind of mixed reviews on that one, I think.
Yeah, and then we had Lance Nielsen said, "The dog's bollocks," which was
but that was 3 words. So
sorry,
Lance.
Bollocks. No, it's fine. Some polarizing thoughts there. I kind of fall into one of those camps. I mean, you might have worked it out already, dear listener, but no, I think it's fair. Because this is the thing about this film. And jump off on a quick tangent. It comes out the day that SISU comes out.
Off tangent, never.
I know, right? It comes out the day that SISU comes out, and it kind of felt like this was Netflix's go. I know we know from the few weeks ago but if you're a new listener, you might not. SISU originally was going to be a Netflix film. It was going to be, optioned by them and released. So we always wondered, and you might not ever get to the bottom of it, unless it comes out some months down the line. But this kind of feels like this was bought or optioned by Netflix for the streaming service to be their sort of SISU replacement, and maybe that period type trailer was to lamp onto the SISU reaction to that trailer, because everything you get in that trailer you get and more. Whereas this one, it feels like everything you get in the trailer, you pretty much see, and that's probably about it in terms of action.
Well, it wouldn't be the first time that a studio had put out a rival picture of a similar vein.
Very true. Yeah, exactly. This isn't even in mockbuster territory either. You're not trying to cash in. This is a well-made film, for its budget.
Absolutely.
Everything else, the actual production itself isn't the thing I take umbrage with this week, or not umbrage even, just I don't really get. But yeah, it's interesting that this comes out at the same time, and I know that I think the hype for SISU might have been bigger, because SISU's getting a theatrical release over here. At least this is straight to Netflix. It's streaming versus theatrical. Is it still a thing we're going to have to work through as a viewing public, as consumers of content? We're going to have to. This is a weird medium that we're in right now. One is still perceived as probably being a lot more prestigious than the other. I think
there's a direct-to-DVD sort of stigma with Netflix and streamers still, isn't it, to a degree? Although, God knows some good stuff has come out of it. But
yeah, exactly. It's weird. You get something like All Quiet on the Western Front, which is like an Oscar contender.
Yeah, winner.
And then, winner, sorry. And then you get this. And where does this sit? Because Netflix it's not a creative thing. It's not like, the Criterion Collection. It's not
God knows studios are putting out some crap anyway into theatres. I mean, look at that new Jennifer Lawrence film.
Yeah, exactly. There's some weird things.
Which is, again, that's a Sony picture, which we saw the trailer for that with the...
that was an experience, wasn't it? In a room
and, if anyone from Sony is listening to that, like, don't take that to heart. Yeah.
Fighting on Film talks non-genre movies for
right. Talk about tangents.
Amazing.
Jumping off the back of that, let's talk about some alley kit.
It's time for Alley Tally on Fighting on Film.
It's nice to see a German officer popping pills.
Yeah, the Pemberton, yeah.
Rarely see that. Yeah,
Yeah, they made a point of panning over the tube too, so you can see the name, and
that's cool.
I mean, I really like the characterization of the Colonel.
Really do.
He plays it fabulously. It's archetypal evil Nazi SS officer, but it's so sinister and unhinged to the point of perfection, I think. And
you remind me
that
of
tin face prosthetic really adds to it, because the practical effects, or the impractical effects.
And he gets the ring out of the eye. Oh gosh, that was, and then oh god, that was brutally, done. And they don't even tell you how he lost his face, really, do they? No. So that was a nice little thing. They go, how did he lose it? Did he get like dragged through a thing or not?
Well, there's lots of nice nuances with all of the characters. That you can, you've got the priest or the pastor that is, essentially a lapsed Catholic, going out with, or having as a partner the huntress, who pops up later in the film. The nuance of Mary Hank Hack's character, Elsa, where she has a fiance that's gone off to war, or husband that's gone off to war, and she's looking after her brother.
There's a hell of a lot going on. There's
there's lots that that is there for you to go, wow, okay.
They build up the little town really well, and
they do, because you've got the Gauleiter, and then we got like his wife who's disgruntled because he's having an affair with like the local business lady. It's very interesting. Like, there's a lot of nuance within the characterization of the characters. But at the same time, when people were asking me what I thought of it initially, because I watched it a couple of weeks ago, on Twitter, I was describing it as like SISU, but with a little bit more depth.
Yeah, I think you're right there. I mean, I think it has SISU elements, but I don't think it's in the same bracket.
No, it isn't, and we'll talk about more.
SISU never slowed down. This movie does.
This has this. This has
but in terms of Ali stuff, there's a Sherman. Wasn't expecting to see. That was cool.
Right at the end.
Right at the end, MP40s galore. I've never seen so many MP40s being fired, and they have the right tack. Like slow kind of rate of fire.
And they reload them.
Yeah, that was cool. And they have a nice thing where, like in Last of the Mohicans, where you've got a guy giving a guy fouling pieces that are already loaded, so it's quicker. You've got a guy giving it the German sergeant MP40, so doesn't have to reload. There's a nice section where you see like a sniper rifle being used,
Yeah,
Gewehr with a scope.
K98K.
Yeah. A Panzerfaust at the end. That's pretty cool.
Panzerfaust was cool. P38 pistols throughout.
Mm.
MG42s in the opening and in other bits. There's a nice section where they're in the rafters of the church, and there's some M39 German egg grenades being rolled around.
It's nice. Yeah.
The Panzerfaust was really cool. I'm not sure it would have collapsed an entire medieval spire, but that's a bit OP.
Matt spent months writing about the Piat, like taking out what it can and can't take out. So he's like, he looked at what a Panzerfaust can and can't take out for contrast. So every time I see a Panzerfaust used in the movie, I'm like, Matt's going to be all over that one. It's cool to see him though.
It was a nice inclusion, and the CGI for it wasn't too bad. They kind of showed that it wasn't the fastest flying projectile.
No, exactly. Because I might be talking out of my backside, but I don't think the Panzerfaust is in movies as much as we think it is.
No, that's
kind of like how we think the Piat isn't in as much as it really is. Like it's not. It pops up, but it's not as prevalent as you think it would be. Like there was, how many Panzerfausts were knocking around at that top part of the war? It was so many of them. Lads had bundles of them running around. The Volkssturm, handed them as like singular weapons because it just was.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah,
and totally. Decent rifles, things, and knocking around. But it was nice to see it. Like, and she fired it. I thought it would be like like a tease that it wouldn't get used or something. That was nice. You get a Kubelwagen being blown up. That was cool to see.
Yeah. I like the strafing run of the US aircraft.
That was cool.
And it didn't blow up the truck. They just animated it so the cannon fire wrecked the chassis.
It was nice. Matt appreciated that. I know you did.
I was like, look, that didn't blow up. Normally that would blow up in a film, but they had to do something different.
Yeah, it was nice. I liked it. And it was nice, like not the whole like fake out in Saving Private Ryan where is it Miller or no, it's actually the tank buster because God, I remember. Do you remember that? Do you remember that whole thing? Like just to go off on another tangent this week, but do you remember that? Do you remember how boring and laborious that was to talk about with people before the internet proper?
How did he shoot that tank with a handgun?
Yeah. Well, at school we'd be like, a bullet went up the turret. Oh yeah. Went up the barrel of the tiger.
There's probably a few there's probably like at least a few like 480 240p YouTube videos where people talk about that.
It's got to be
15 years ago.
Like the early days of YouTube. Yeah. Exactly. But now we have these beautiful widescreen shots. Maybe on like an old telly. Maybe that it cropped it a little bit.
I watched it a lot on a little combi TV, and I always thought it was the plane that flew over.
Part of me wished it was Miller, and then when you're old, you think, it's obviously the tank buster getting a good hit on the back of that radiator or something, like,
who knows?
Anyway. But no, it was nice. Oh, Opel. We'll talk about vehicles and things. The Opel Blitz. That was a lovely little thing to see, and it was a genuine Opel Blitz, not a mocked up Benny, not a post-war vehicle painted grey like in SISU. It was an actual Opel Blitz. I was like, wow, very nice.
They did a great job getting some period kit, and I'm going to say it had decent mise en scène.
I was just about to mention that
it feels authentic, and it captures that late war griminess. There's nuance within even the supporting cast uniforms. Helmet covers are different. There's a medic with a painted helmet there as well. Different, I think one's wearing like the early Flecktarn type.
The blouse thing. Yeah,
that's it. It's not called Flecktarn, but it's one of the tarns.
Is it oak? Oak pattern?
Yeah, something like that.
I'm probably way off. Someone's going to moan at me on.
Definitely not an expert on German camo of the late war period. That's for sure.
Camo corner with Matthew Moss.
It's never going to be a feature. That's for sure.
No, we've tried before.
But I do like the little intricacies. The costumers have gone to some nice lengths to put different kit in different places on people, like different mess tins, respirator like tubes and bayonets in different spots. And
there's nice civilian weapons as well, like the shotgun that also has things like that. It's really cool.
The big bore hunting rifles that the Huntress has. I can't remember whether she was actually given a name in the film, but she's.
I was annoyed there was no Volksturm though.
Yeah,
In a
that is true.
way.
I mean, the Gauleiter dude kind of like hints that he's the local area commander, doesn't he? But
Yeah,
you don't see
yeah.
anyone.
I mean,
I thought
it's not beyond the realms of possibility that local Volksturm just might have just disintegrated way before the Americans got there. It's
they've
not
been
beyond
put on a
it's
truck
not.
and taken to that village that they see in the distance getting absolutely
Oh yeah,
hammered.
maybe. Yeah,
That's a really nice shot, actually. I like that.
I
So
do like that. Yeah.
they're in like a roof of somewhere. Is it the church? I don't know.
Mm.
But they're overlooking and they can see in the distance. And there's a little conversation between two of the actors, and he says, "My aunt lives there."
Yes. It did really feel like there was a war going on, other than this little village was going to be eclipsed eventually. It did feel.
It certainly
It
did
felt.
that better than Zissou did.
It did, yeah, because SISU felt like it was taking part in its own alternate universe right until the end when you saw some Finnish troops.
Yeah.
But then that movie is, that movie's in its own league really in terms of what it did.
Yeah.
But no, I think overall in terms of Ali, in terms of kit and equipment seen on screen, this is quite powerful. It's a strong contender from what we've had for many weeks, for a few weeks now. I think this one's up there. There was nothing that really stood out to me as being completely out of the blue, and it's not. And I wasn't really expecting much anyway. So I was pleasantly surprised. One thing that I did see, one of the American chaps was wearing M1951 suspenders, which are post-war Korean War. Thought it might be M49. Well, they're Korean War ones anyway, so they've got a thicker webbing strap. Right, but that's really like anorak, like. I couldn't help it.
Corner with Rob.
It really was.
Literally like a 3-second glimpse of some Americans at the end of the film, and Rob's there like, nah.
I was analysing
that one there. Out of those dozen guys, that one right there is wearing the wrong webbing.
Literally was like that, yeah. But no, sometimes
this is where we get another RC comment or review where it's like they're just rivet counters. Like, we're not, honestly, I swear to God.
Dale, I love that about us. So what could I'm going to hang my hat on that every week now.
At least we compartmentalize it into just one section of the show.
Anyway, I think we should probably move on to favourite scenes.
So for me this week, my favourite scene has to be Paul in the church tower.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it?
It's a very nice payoff to a character that something bad is going to happen to.
I know, I was really sad when he got hurt.
Because he's introduced, he's kind, he's looking after animals, he helps Lanza's back, there's a scene in the farmhouse where Elsa's brought Lanza, the I think he's called the private in the British credits, back to her farmhouse, and Paul kind of like cracks his back for him.
Yes.
And
they call him our little ox or something, don't they?
Yeah, something like that.
It just feels like he's been sheltered from the war there. I really like that. The really strong characters.
Again,
I've got to say, yeah.
And I respect the representation, of people with Down syndrome, and the mention of Nazi extermination, of disabled people, on to mention, etc. And then Paul has his badass little sequence that you aren't quite expecting. He's obviously, he's not as oblivious and helpless as he's set up to be.
Yeah.
And he goes out like a don.
He really does. He goes out like an absolute G. But he has motivation though, because they kill his cow.
They do. They kill his cow. They
well
shoot his chickens. They try and rape his sister.
So he's got plenty of. I was like, not a cow. As long as the
cow was going to die. Like, you knew that the cow was going to get shot. Paul was going to be sad about that, and then Paul was going to die at some point. That was always on the cards.
As soon as that character
was introduced, sadly.
Emotionally and physically abused him. I was really sad about that. I was like, "There's no need, chaps. There's literally no need."
Nazis.
Oh yeah. So, bad guy's good or bad guy, but even then.
So he gets that great little sequence where they take him up into the church tower to make an example of him.
And that whole thing of, again, sorry, we should have mentioned it in the alley tally, more historical, but the whole thing of putting signs around people and hanging them late war, it happened. It was happening.
Unworthy to live around his neck.
I was waiting for them to start painting propaganda stuff on walls and things for the sake of the people. Like I was,
but
I was
I mean,
waiting
they
for
weren't
that.
really that arse, were they? They were just there to like
No,
find the
they
gold,
weren't.
so they weren't like.
I know,
Still
but if it happened,
100% on cause.
it'd have been accurate and nice addition if they had,
Yeah.
you know, Sieg on a wall. They used to write that and things. And then I read a thing where there was a Volksturm. Sorry, quickly thing. There was a Volksturm guy. He wrote a diary and he said something like, "It was pointless." Like he said, we've been fighting this war for nearly 6 years now, and you've literally walked into the town, painted some stuff on a wall, and expected us all to like fight because you've done some graffiti. He thought it was absurd. I'm paraphrasing him massively, but it always makes. I'm writing a thing at the moment about the Volkswagen. That's why I keep bringing it up. It's in my head. But it's interesting how in Germany the end of the war is so fascinating. Really.
Yeah.
And that's why I kind of like this movie. For what it did.
The film captures that end of the war gritty, inevitable.
No one's safe. No one's at ease, are they? There's this.
No, there's a tension throughout the whole film, and I love that. But yeah, they take him up into the tower. They're about to hang him, and then Paul, has this great moment where he kicks or he pushes a guy out the tower.
That's
grabs
where the
an
gore
MP40.
came in. That sort of. That was being Glorious Bastardsy, that bit with MP5 shooting them down. That reminded me of the cinema sequence.
Yeah. And then shouts, "I'll show you who's unworthy to live," which I love.
Yeah, it's nice. It's good writing.
It's a good scene. That's my favourite scene.
No, it's good. For me, I'm not, you thought I was done talking about the Yanks, but I'm not. But I liked seeing. I liked when the Sherman turned up. I was really not expecting it.
Yeah, no surprise.
I think it's Sonia. I think it's the mayor's squeeze woman, lady friend. She's driving away with the gold in the back of the Kubelwagen, or some of the gold at least, in the back of the Kubelwagen, and it's all happy. And you've got this like sort of like summery type music. It's sort of like what's that classic song? It's like it felt like that. In the background, and it's the color palette changes a little bit, and it all seems happy. And I thought that was a genuine end. So I was like, oh, okay, someone gets away, and there's this huge explosion. And the Kubelwagen flies off screen, like turns over, and a Sherman just pulls up out of the view, and you've got a stereotypical sort of gun ho GI going, "Yeah, we got him." I really like that sort of sort of cowboy-esque sort of "Yeah, we got him." And then they go and inspect the Kubelwagen, and there's gold. And this American sergeant gets off the jeep, and he's like, "Oh, okay, some gold." And the private or the corporal's like, "We should call it in." And the guy goes, "No, I think we should just keep it." I really like that, and I thought then, this is me sort of straying as final thoughts, don't mean to, but I wish they'd then come in and caused absolute carnage in the town at the end to find more gold, to be greedy. I thought that's what they were going to. I thought they were going to get involved more. They didn't. So I was just a bit disappointed. Anyway, but interestingly, another thing I've got to mention, I got excited because I was like, "Oh, black soldiers you barely see, like black GIs in any war film, because, or not any war film. There's a few, but not many, because you might not be aware, listener, but the American Army was segregated until I think it was 1946, wasn't it? 1947.
Yeah,
late 40s at least. I can't remember off the top of my head. It was Truman that wasn't. Hang on, yeah, Truman desegregated the army. So I was really interested to see it. There was a recent straight to streaming film called Come Out Fighting that dealt with black tankers in World War II. But the guys that and the shoulder patch, I was like, oh, I researched that. I kind of vaguely know that shoulder patch from somewhere, and it turned out that I was getting a bit confused with another movie, but then I found out what that movie was. So the movie I'd remembered the shoulder patch from was The Miracle at St. Anna, which is a Spike Lee film, 2008.
Yeah.
So I was like, right, now we're on to somewhere. So
that's not set in Germany, is it?
No, that's set in Italy. So they served in Italy and Western Europe, and no, they only served in Italy. So I don't know what they're doing there, unless they've driven their tank straight up. They did what Churchill wanted. Soft underbelly, keep going straight to Berlin, boys. Not going to stop. But no, I like it, even though it was anachronistic.
It must have been an artistic choice.
Maybe, yeah. Maybe it was a nice choice anyway. It's nice to see them.
Interesting, they made them correct division as well, because they could have easily just badged them up as anyone.
Yeah, they could have, couldn't they? And I still would. They could have just not had any badges on. It'd have been fine. Yeah. no, a nice inclusion nevertheless, and it did remind me that we should do Miracle at Santana, because that's an interesting film. Because
Yeah, we should.
Spike Lee's done 2 war films, hasn't he? He's done that one and the Five Bloods.
By Blood, yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, that was a favourite scene of mine. I also liked any scene with the SS officer in because of how cartoonishly evil he was. He got his comeuppance, got poisoned in the end.
His death scene is great. Elsa using his own cyanide pill.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Like that whole sort of like end of war beats as well was really nice.
Yeah, but she didn't take his pistol.
No,
another example of when you should take the pistol.
But the sinisterness of him claiming her for himself, but not doing it in it. This is good writing, but not doing it in a like. I can't. It's difficult to explain it without being creepy, but like not in a sort of aggressively, grabby way. You know what I mean? I'm trying to say he did it through words.
There's a sinister air to the way he does it, and he sort of he lays claim to her, and he kind of just air he gives off is there's no saying no.
No, yeah. If you say no, I'll kill you or worse type thing. Yeah, it's almost it's not worse, but it's on the same level as her nearly being SA'd earlier in the movie, or being sexually assaulted earlier in the movie. It's on a par with that for the level of creepiness. Played really well. Von Starnfield would. He'd scare the shit out of any commando book, GI or commando. In his evilness, he'd be up there.
It's classic archetypal.
Yeah, really good. And it's a trope that I haven't seen for a while, so I was really into it, and I was like, "Oh, this dude's evil as fuck. Hope he gets killed." Thank fuck he did. Right. That's one thing the movie does pay off, though. Characters you don't like do get demises, and I like that, because sometimes the demises aren't as tasty as you want them to be, but his was tasty.
Very true.
Very true. Final thoughts?
I liked it. I watched it a few weeks before Rob did, and on first viewing I was like, "Oh, this is really good." I actually did what I never do, and I watched it with the Netflix dub.
How could you, Matthew? You've broken an internal fighting on film rule. If the movie's in a certain language, you watch it in a certain language.
I know. And you know what? It wasn't a bad dub.
Not bad. Okay. Fair enough then.
It was one of Netflix
You've got the green light from Mr. Moss there. The dub is fine. Because sometimes the dub just loses its...
It does. It loses nuance.
Loses something. Yeah.
And I thought it was a really interesting story. Well scripted, well acted, nicely shot, although not in the style that I expected, because I was expecting a little more of that kind of sort of like pulp grindhouse Euro war macaroni.
I was waiting for like whip transitions and like box close-ups like Sergio Leone type stuff.
Yeah,
like those spaghetti western type stuff.
Yep.
Bit Wes Anderson. I was waiting for that, but it didn't happen. It's a shame.
Yeah, I think what happened is they wanted to do a Western sort of style film, but then for some reason or other, somewhere within production, it didn't really
come
off,
that way.
Or perhaps that was just something that they decided to say afterwards because of marketing and
I think
approach
it's SISU
evolved. I don't know.
I think SISU hurt that maybe a little bit. Netflix wants to get its SISU-ness out, so it edits up that trailer. I think that's for me, because I'm in the same boat with you. I'm a little bit in the same boat. I'm sort of paddling.
The trailer was really good
behind you. Yeah.
I mean, I think before
no, it's fine.
We go into it. I think the Tarantino comparisons are understandable, especially from that farmhouse scene. It's very easy for someone to just take a cursory glance at that and go, "Oh yeah, it's the Inglourious Basterds farm opening." But it does overlook that like rich history of Euro war movies and
they get overlooked massively. They're quite influential even today. There's definitely a certain breed of movie maker that still holds those movies quite dear. you know.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't overlook
I mean-
the influence of spaghetti westerns overall, anyway.
Well,
You know,
yeah, exactly. And like Zissou, I wouldn't call this a war film. I would say that there are more elements in it of war film.
yeah, it's
as
like a
genre.
wartime action adventure. That's what I'd sort of go
it
for.
is.
I don't.
It's
Yeah,
but it's
I don't.
not a out and out war movie with a direct, anti-war
Yeah, well, there's not like
message
one
or
army and
anything like
another
that.
army, and they meet in a courtyard and have a big
Yeah.
battle. There's not that either. You know,
Mhm.
it's like a slice, almost like a slice of life in a way. You know what I mean by that?
There's
It's
definite
a
elements
slice of a slice of a village.
yeah, it's like a
You know what I
snapshot
mean?
of
Yeah,
a weird
that-
week.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, a rough week in Sonnenberg, Sonberg.
I would say that my criticisms of the film are the pacing's a little bit off in places with some bits that really slow it down. But there's some really
Mhm.
excellent set pieces. There's some really nice fights there's a little bit of a Wiccan influence.
As there is now, as you can't
Yeah,
not
as you
have.
often see,
Yeah.
it's increasingly the case. Good story, well acted. On my second watch, where I watched it with subtitles, I still enjoyed it.
Matt's revisioning his own work. So this is the quickest revisionist history you've ever seen, folks.
But one thing that that did stand out to me more was the times when the score doesn't work. So
Right.
there's points where some of the Western themed little audio motifs don't work for me. I thought that the climactic fight in the church at the end was really well shot, really well done, nicely storyboarded, paid off all the characters in a way that was partially what you would expect, but also in some nice nuance. But there were points where the twangy guitars didn't quite work, and I don't know. There's something just I don't for some reason mentally combine Grey Palette with spaghetti western style.
Yeah, it's this whole thing. If you're going to do
score.
it, lean into it way more.
Hmm.
Because the soundtrack is there for you to lean into. So I was expecting, maybe like so they showed that bar at the start, and I was thinking, oh, okay, so it's like you got the Western influence. We're gonna have a shootout in that bar.
Yeah,
and we're gonna have people flung over the.
We do get a classic hanging scene though.
Yeah, we do. We get that. Yeah, but I was expecting people to be like, thrown up the bar and smashed into bottles of schnapps. All things like that. I was waiting for that to happen. It didn't happen. It just annoyed me a little bit. And I'm kind of like you. As I said, I'm not in the same boat this week. I'm sort of paddling away from it because I like the script. I like the characters. I like the setting. But as I said, the pacing just threw me right off.
Yeah.
The
There's
gold
a middle
for me,
section which goes into a little bit too much exposition.
Yeah, and this is maybe where I'm critical. Well, it's not really, no. It's sort of like the gold for me should be the MacGuffin. The gold's the reason. But then we go off on this huge, and it felt like half an hour because it just dragged a little bit for me. Where we get this whole backstory of the gold and how it came to be and why it is, and the pastor's, backstory and his morality and all that. And I was like, well, I don't need it. Here's where I should be having a big shootout.
Interesting, but does kind of affect the pacing.
It kind of really stopped the movie a little bit. Yeah, it might have been 10 minutes, and it's 10 minutes you could probably lose, or you could say through exposition. Because for me, all I needed to know at the start was von Starnfeld says, "Oh, that this was a Jewish family's house. It was burnt down.
Yeah.
We threw the Jews out, and this was that they had the gold, or they knew where the gold was." But then it turns out that's not really everything, and
you do one or the other.
Later.
You either do the exposition in dialogue or you show it. I think
exactly. Yeah,
twice.
You could have had a nice little flash. Well, I say nice. It's not nice to see people thrown at the home and be home burnt down, but you could have had a flashback there and shown that for the sake of a burning a building for about how much that would cost. But it annoyed me a little bit, and I kind of was expecting more than a Western soundtrack and some Sergio Leone looking, Django style titles cards. I was expecting more. Like Zissou
there weren't enough beats
Yeah,
in
and
other
this
words.
is where it's annoying that we have SISU to compare it to, because it's unfair to compare the two, because they're not the same kind of movie. I think Blood and Gold leans more into the adventure style action adventure, where SISU is more of a weird road movie mixed in with an actioner, mixed in with a Western parody. There's a lot going on there, or Western homage at least, and strong silent types, all that type of thing. This movie isn't really doing that, because Mazza has more to say, actually has a backstory. Yeah. It just didn't land properly for me. Like, there's moments I enjoyed, but this week, for quite a while actually, I haven't really. The movie just didn't resonate with me. It didn't stick in my head. I had to go back and watch a few sequences a few times, because I'll be honest with the listener, I'd plainly forgotten them a few days after watching it, which is a shame, because I wanted to like this film, because the trailer had built me up, and I think that's what reference, go full circle back to the start of the episode. That trailer set me up for a film that I didn't get, and I was annoyed about that. But I'm not sure that's the fault of the director. I'm not sure that's the fault of the script writer, the cast, anything. That's a post thing for promotion, which didn't do the movie a service.
We got that straight trailer, and then we got the sort of exploitation film style trailer.
Yeah, and this movie isn't really that.
No,
it has
not.
beats of it, but it doesn't lean into it enough.
If they'd gone all in, it would have worked, I think. But also, if they had gone for a straighter, more traditional kind of war movie, adventure movie type thing, with a different type of score, some different editing choices, then I think it would have worked better that way.
Just as well. Yeah, this is what I mean. I was just conflicted with it this week. I was like, I kind of want to like it, then I don't. And then I think, the John Wick fight scene, do we need that? Could you just
thought that
lean...
went well.
I've seen it a lot though lately, I think.
It wasn't too Wickian for me. It was enough. Like, there was parts of it that I thought, okay, that's quite a nice representation of how they've done that. I like how they've approached that.
I think I've had enough of it lately.
It was overblown, but I've seen John Wick 4. You haven't seen John Wick 4.
Yeah, but then I was kind of burnt out.
John Wick 4 is way too overblown.
John Wick 3 burnt me out a little bit of that whole.
Yeah. Well, if you watch 4, it'll
right. Well, I've been on a few people's recommendations, been holding off on watching 4 for a bit. Someone will come along and crack this Western Euro style thing that this was going for, might lean into it heavier. But this wasn't it, and this shouldn't have been it.
There's definitely some sort of subgenre or resurgence of a subgenre emerging with these sort of films.
Nice try, but it just didn't land for me.
The best thing for you guys to do is, you've heard 2 opinions on it. Go and watch it and make up your own.
Yeah, please do. It's on Netflix. One of the films which couldn't be easy to see it if you have a Netflix subscription. So there we go. That was Blood and Gold. Next week will be our Patreon pick. If you are a Patreon listener, by the time you listen to this episode, the vote might have gone. If you're not, do check the Patreon and do become a Patreon and help keep the mics on here at FOF HQ. We'd love to have you. And keep it FOF for all things war movie reviews. Follow us on our socials, on Twitter, Facebook, TikTok. You find everything on our website, actually, at fightingonfilm.com. You can start from episode 1, have a FOF binge. If you do, let us know how you're enjoying the show. Give us a review, and we'll catch you next week.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.